The lecture today is von Thunen's Agricultural Location Theory. This lecture is mainly divided into 4 parts: the background and purpose of the theory, the content of von Thunen's Agricultural Location Theory, the applied research of the theory, the significance and flaws of the theory. Now, let's start with the first part. The background and purpose of the theory, von Thunen's Agricultural Location Theory, was put forward by the German agricultural economist John von Thunen, and is a product of the special social and economic background of Germany in the 19th century. In the early 19th century, Prussia carried out agricultural system reforms, prompting nobles to become large landowners and independent agricultural entrepreneurs, and farmers to become agricultural laborers, able to freely sell their labor. Consequently, an enterprise-style agricultural business model composed of agricultural entrepreneurs and agricultural laborers emerged, and enterprise-oriented agriculture began to grow. Thunen himself was also an agricultural capitalist. In 1810, he purchased and started operating the Tellow Farm in Mecklenburg, Germany, where he recorded detailed agricultural data for more than 10 years. In 1826, he published The Isolate State, which systematically expounded the ideas of agricultural location theory for the first time and laid the foundation of agricultural location theory. In constructing his agricultural location theory system, Thunen adopted the scientific abstraction and envisaged a hypothetical space called isolate state, based on which he sought a reasonable agricultural production method in the era of enterprise-like agriculture, and explored its principles of regional configuration. Next, we're going to make an introduction and analysis to the specific content of Thunen's agricultural location theory. For the sake of the research convenience, Thunen's model of agricultural land made the following simplifying assumptions. First, there is an isolated state, and only one city in the whole state, located in the middle of the fertile plain. Second, in this isolated state, there is no navigable, natural water flow or artificial canals, and goods can't be transported through rivers. Horse-drawn carts are the only means of transporting products. Third, it is assumed that all the land in the whole territory is the fertile plain. The soil fertility everywhere is completely equal and suitable for cultivation, eliminating the impact of land quality on the production of agricultural products, and making the location analysis more concise. Fourth, 50 miles away from the city is the uncultivated wilderness, which cuts off all its links with the outside world, excluding the impact of international trade on domestic commodity transactions. Fifth, the supply of artificial products only comes from the central city, and the city's food is entirely provided by the surrounding countryside. This assumption emphasizes the unity of the market, which only exists in this particular city. Agricultural products can be transported to the market of this city as commodities for sale. Sixth, the mines and salt works that supply the metals and salt needed by the entire state are all located near the city. At the same time, the pursuit of maximizing benefits is also an important prerequisite. As a result, the following 2 questions arise. First, how will agriculture be like in such a relationship? Second, how will the distance from the city affect agriculture under the proper operation of agriculture? In other words, in order to obtain the maximum net income from the land, how will the farm management change as the distance from the city increases? In this regard, Thunen adopted the isolation method to study. That is, regardless of the differences in natural conditions, only examining the relationship between the configuration of agricultural production methods and the distance from the city in a homogeneous virtual space. Based on the aforementioned assumptions, as well as the prerequisites that the freight rate is proportional to the distance and weight, and that the freight rate varies from crop to crop, Toonen gives the general formula for rent income. R equals PQ, CQ, KTQ equals P, C, KT, Q. Using this formula, we can draw two conclusions. First, under the Toonen conditions, the rent of the same product is only related to the freight. Second, the freight rate cannot be increased without limit. Otherwise, the operation method will have to be changed. When the rent income is zero, even if the farming technology is feasible, it is not economically reasonable. Thereby, it becomes the ultimate limit of the cultivation of a certain type of crop. The production of agricultural products is a rational activity based on the pursuit of maximum rent, and the landowner will choose the crop that generates the largest rent. The spatial configuration mode of agricultural production methods is generally to grow crops that are relatively bulky to their prices in the vicinity of the city, or to produce products that are perishable and must be consumed when fresh. The farther away from the city, crops with less transportation cost compared to their prices are planted. Around the city, a concentric structure dominated by certain crops in each circle will be formed. The isolated state, therefore, 6 concentric zonal rings of agricultural production arranged from the inside out. Now, shall we take a further look at the land use structure of Toonen's model of agricultural land use? The land adjacent to the market would be used for free cash cropping. It is the closest to the market and mainly produces vegetables, milk, and other agricultural products with large urban demand, perishable deterioration, and high unit output rate. In this ring, landowners and farmers should invest as much labor and capital as possible to obtain the maximum agricultural output with the smallest land area. The size of this ring is determined by the consumption set by the size of the urban population, and it only extends outwards according to the needs of the city. The second ring is forestry. Timber and firewood would be produced for fuel and building materials in this ring. Being a principal fuel and exceedingly bulky, it would be located close to the city to save the transportation cost. However, the rent needs to pay for the land used for wood planting, and the rent in the vicinity of the city is often higher. From an economic point of view, it should be planted in the second ring near the city. The third ring is relatively a narrow ring, in which the crop alternation system prevails. Toonen proposed that each piece of land be divided into 6 areas for alternation, with various wheat, grains, and feedstuff as the main, and there is no fallow land left. The fourth ring, a grain pasture agriculture area, which is a mixed zone of agriculture and husbandry, while livestock is mainly in captivity. In this ring, arable land is used in turn for grain and root crop cultivation and for pasture. All farmland, according to Toonen, are divided into 7 parts in this ring, so that one of the fields is always periodically left fallow and fertilized with manure. In the 5th ring is where the traditional 3-field system prevalent. It's the farthest and most extensive grain production area from the city. Farmers use the land close to their homes as cultivated land. Each land is divided into 3 fields, and each land is cultivated for 3 years and left fallow for 1 year. The land far from home is used as a permanent pasture for breeding cattle, horses, sheep, and other livestock. The 6th ring would be a region of livestock ranching. Farthest from the city, agricultural products grown here have the highest transportation costs, and the production is mainly nomadic. The products sold here are used to meet the farmer's own needs. Only those products that are more valuable than grains, have lower shipping costs, can be profitable here. Outside this ring, the land rent is 0, which is a wasteland that no one uses. Now, let's dig into the applied research of Toonan's model. The applied research utilizing the Toonan model is represented by Olof Jonasson's European Agricultural Zoning Study. Jonasson divided into 7 major zones, with Northwest Europe as the center of integrating the population density of Europe, the distribution of various crops, livestock, fruits, and agricultural landscape. The first zone cultivates greenhouses and flowers. The second zone grows gardening products, fruits, potatoes, tobacco. The third zone produces cheese products, beef and mutton, feed, etc. Until the 7th zone is the forest. It is not difficult to find that from the 1st to the 7th zone, the overall output value per unit area is getting lower and lower. In the end, we summarize the significance and limitations of Toonan's agricultural location theory. In the study of economic location, Toonan's agricultural location theory established an isolated research thinking method and had a profound influence on the later location theory. In agricultural geography, it reveals that under the same natural conditions, agricultural spatial differentiation may also occur. On the other hand, Toonan's model also has its own limitations. The model is a theoretical one under completely homogeneous conditions, and it is a high-level abstraction of objective reality. The isolated state really exists in reality. The theory also does not take into account the spatial issues of self-supply agricultural activities and the diversity of land use in the surrounding areas of the city. Robert Sinclair, 1967, an American geographer, has suggested an alternative land use pattern through studying the land use of American cities. Basically, his thoughts were based on von Toonan theory, but he inverted von Toonan's model and came up with a completely opposite model, the inverse Toonan's model. He pointed out that around the cities in developed countries, the geographical layout is exactly the opposite of the model. There are not only land for agricultural use around modern cities, but also mixed with various land use methods, such as office buildings, businesses, residences, and factories. Thank you. That's all for this lecture.